Hello, I'm Zaccura and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be painting some scenes from Studio Ghibli's film Spirited Away using Himi Jelly Gouache. Painting scenes from Studio Ghibli films has been kind of an ongoing trend within the whole online YouTube artist circuit, and I'm not really sure who started it or how or why, but all I do know is that it's aesthetic and pretty and kind of addicting to watch, and I was definitely past due to give this trend a try for myself. Especially because I don't think I've ever drawn a full-on landscape before with traditional mediums, definitely not with gouache. It's like a whole different way of painting that I'm completely not used to, and therefore I have to give it a try. Because y'all know how much I love to panic and struggle. The movie I picked was Spirited Away, and the first scene I tried to paint was this one. It's a scene from when Chihiro and No-Face are on the train to go visit Yubaba's sister, Zeniba. That whole train ride scene has so many aesthetic and iconic shots, but the one with the little house on the little patch of land and the little tree really caught my eye. I thought it was just gorgeous. Painting it was a bit of a struggle, and I struggled a lot with all of the scenes I painted, but I think because this was the first one, I struggled the most because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Like I said, painting landscapes, or at least this sort of landscape, which contains very realistic interactions of light and textures, requires a very different approach to painting than what I'm accustomed to with gouache. So far, I've only used gouache for very flat, blocky, controlled methods of painting, mostly for characters, and for those I only use a handful of different colors per painting, and really don't deal much with layering or changing the thickness of the paint. But this scene has so much blending and textures and different colors melding and mixing together that I was like, what the heck, how do I even start this thing? Watching other artists on YouTube paint Studio Ghibli scenes with gouache definitely did help me. I learned that it works best when you work from thin layers to thick layers, so that's what I did. But I really didn't fully understand the properties of the paint until I actually started using it like this. For one, I kind of overestimated the opaqueness of the white. I figured I could just use white paint to like blob in those clouds over the blue, something I would do if I was painting this digitally, for example, but I found out that doing that takes a ton of white paint, kind of a waste really, and I still wasn't able to get it as white as it would be if I had preserved the white of the paper instead, something I probably would do if I were to do it again. And in other parts of the painting, I underestimated the opaqueness of the gouache, particularly with the shadows on the clouds. I made them really dark and sharp at some point, and it ended up looking more like mountains than clouds, and once I made that realization, some major hyperventilating started setting in, and then as I tried to fix it, the clouds started to get kind of overworked, which set in some more hyperventilating. And then there was the struggle with color matching. If you guys know me, you know that paint mixing is one of my biggest nemesises. I have been getting better at it, but I definitely wasn't able to match the colors of the reference picture for this, at least very accurately. I think overall my piece is a lot more on the blue side of things, whereas the original really embodies that warm, golden sunset time of the day. And maybe I am being slightly hypercritical by pointing all of this stuff out, but I think one of the main points of doing a study is to be hypercritical. You are comparing the original with your recreation and seeing what matches up and where to improve on going forward. I also have this philosophy that the more you struggle on a painting, the more you learn from it and the faster you improve. And this time it was definitely no different. I learned tons about this medium just from this one study, and that knowledge definitely carried over to the next two paintings. But, so that I'm not only talking about the stressful parts of this first painting, overall I do think that it was not bad at all for a first try, and if I was judging it purely from a painting perspective, like if it was an original painting I had come up with, then I'd be like, yeah, pretty good. Good job, Zaccura. I mean, that tree? That's a really nice tree. And I think that is one of the large benefits of doing studies of Studio Ghibli scenes, now that I've given it a try, is that the composition of the scenes are so top-notch that even if your study isn't perfect, even if there's problems with it, you're still almost guaranteed to end up with something that is nice and aesthetic because you're working from a really good reference. And I think when you're learning something new, it's so important to have those small successes, if you will, to have paintings that, even if they're not perfect, you still like, or at least there are aspects in the painting that you like, because that gives you the drive and inspiration to keep going and to keep practicing and to keep improving. It can be really difficult to keep forcing yourself to do something that's really difficult if the end result is also something that you dislike. And working with scenes from movies like Studio Ghibli or other studios that you really like Disney or Leica Studios or whatnot, I think is a really great way to ease yourself into environmental painting because the composition is already done for you and there's scenes that you already like. So you'll be able to judge yourself more accurately on just your painting technique and execution rather than your composition skills. And the extra benefit of using animated films for reference rather than real-life photographs or movies is that it's already a painting. It's already been painted by a real-life human being. And studying how these other artists painted these scenes and observing the artistic choices that they made can really inspire ideas for your own original paintings. Like I'm telling you, those iconic Ghibli trees, kind of a fan. I kind of want to paint more trees like that. And obviously, painting from photographs and still lifes is really important too, but the addition of studying other artists' work, especially other artists that you really like and you really admire, is always a good idea, and studying the scenery from your favorite animated films can be a really great place to start. For the next two scenes, I decided to paint them on one piece of paper, one on top of the other, because that's what I saw some other artists do, and I thought it was kind of cute and sketchbooky, which reminds me I really need a new watercolor sketchbook. I usually make my own sketchbooks, but I've been kind of lazy with it recently. I might have to buy one. Give me some recommendations in the comments. But anyway, the scene on top is from when Chihiro gets off of the train and is heading to Zeniba's house, and she and No Face encounter this hopping lantern that leads the way. I thought that scene was really cool, and I was like, well, if I'm painting Spirited Away, then I've got to have at least one of these scenes that shows the characters. When it came to drawing Chihiro's character, I actually decided to draw her more in my own style rather than copying the picture, because I figured since I'm painting these, I might as well add something of my own style and flavoring to it. And since I was doing these studies to study the scenery rather than the character design, it seemed like a fitting area to inject my own style into. Also, the background of this scene is pretty much composed of a single color, like a indigo/Prussian blue, just in slightly different light values. So I figured it might be a simpler scene for me to tackle because there's not so much color mixing required. The second scene is from right near the end of the movie when Chihiro is running in this grassy hill, and it's this gorgeous noontime, blue sky, big clouds time of the day. I felt it was a nice scene that again was relatively simple, so I wouldn't be too overwhelmed.
break it down now.
I chose Spirited Away for this video because it's my personal favorite Studio Ghibli film, at least out of the 5 I've watched so far. I've pretty much only watched the most mainstream, iconic ones, but Spirited Away was the first one I watched, I believe, and it still holds firm as my favorite. I think compared to some of the other Studio Ghibli films, it has a much more solid storyline, which is the main thing that's important to me with any movie. As much as I also really appreciate the visual artistic aspects, story has always been number one for me when I judge a movie, and Spirited Away has that more Hollywood beginning, middle, end structure that I'm kind of a mainstream sucker for. It has action and magic and people turning into pigs, which will no doubt traumatize your children, and some of the most beautiful music and artwork I have ever seen in an animated film. I'm telling ya, that main music theme gives me the goosebumps every time with that something like that. But I also do really enjoy the other movies as well, especially Howl's Moving Castle, which maybe I'll try my hand at painting some scenes for in the future. But anyway, back to these paintings. I believe the original background paintings for the Studio Ghibli films were done with Japanese Nicker poster color paint, something that is very difficult to get in the United States and I think most other parts of the world as well, besides Japan. But I also heard that it's supposedly very similar to gouache. It's opaque but dilutes in water, which is probably why this trend has been going on, because gouache has kind of become pretty popular online and on YouTube especially. But while I was painting these scenes, I almost wished I had done them with watercolor or inks, because I find it easier to get subtle, natural blends and changes in color with ink or watercolor. With gouache, your strokes pretty much stay right where you put it, and it can be very strong and sharp and kind of difficult to blend smoothly, at least for me. And it kind of requires you to mix every color very precisely as you want it to look when it's finished. Whereas with ink or watercolor, each layer dries a bit lighter and it's transparent, so you can build up layers of color to get it to where you want. And also because I do have a lot more experience with ink and watercolor rather than gouache, so that might have something to do with my thinking. But for sure, if I do try to paint more Ghibli scenes in the future, I think I'd probably like to try a combination of ink and gouache or watercolor and gouache. So I could do the base washes in watercolor and just go in with the gouache to get those final layer, more opaque, sharp, solid details. Out of the 3 pieces I did, I think the last one came out the best, simply from an execution standpoint. Nothing is overworked. I was a lot more efficient with my paint usage and strokes, which shows to me a little bit of improvement, maybe, possibly, could be. The color matching was not so bad either, and I think if I kept doing more and more of these, I could keep improving and get even better. Yay! Which would be awesome, because landscapes can be really hard for me as someone who is so character focused and always has been so character focused. So if I can get comfortable with scenery, then it would only help to portray my own worlds and stories. Overall, I think these last two pieces came out really cute. They look like little postcards. And I think this whole challenge was really, really fun. Even though, yes, there was some stress. Yes, there was some panicking, especially on that first painting. It was still really fun and a really nice experience to recreate some of these iconic and gorgeous scenes from one of my favorite movies. And it's a challenge I can definitely recommend to people to give a try, especially if you want to learn how to paint some really neat landscapes. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening and spending some of your day with me. I really enjoyed painting these scenes. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you guys would like to see me do more, then please be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Also be sure to hit that little bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. If you have a minute, be sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. What's your favorite Studio Ghibli film, and have you ever tried this challenge? If so, how did it go? If you'd like to purchase my books or other items from my shop, or subscribe to my newsletter, all that and more can be found over on my website, Zaccura.com. The link is down below in the description box, along with links to all the materials I used in this video and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!